Imagine that life is like a glass chess set. When you're bipolar, you're on this fragile, clear side. A so-called normal individual is more solid. Being bipolar is like being in a state of perpetual checkmate. There's no way out, no way to turn. The harder we try, the further we fall. Without medications, living with bipolar disorder is a losing game, no matter how you look at it. Hi, this is Paxton, and I've made a lot of videos about my experiences with Asperger's syndrome, but I haven't made a video about my life with bipolar disorder, so I thought I would try that. Well, I was first diagnosed when I was 16 years old. I was hospitalized at the time for an overdose. I was feeling suicidal at the time. I was crying uncontrollably the entire time I was on the unit, and at times I would laugh hysterically. And I was given the MMPI test and told that I was bipolar and would need to be on lithium for the rest of my life. Well, I wouldn't take my medications. I didn't follow through with taking my medications because I hated the way they made me feel. And at the time, lithium was the only alternative for people suffering from bipolar disorder. Today I take Lamictal, and I have no side effects at all. And I've been on Lamictal now for 1.5 years, and it's like a dream. I look back on my life, and I can't imagine how I lived the way I lived before. And just being level and stable is such an incredible gift. I could finally make my own choices, except, well, instead of having them all swept away by my emotions. It's the very first time for me. I feel like myself for the very first time. I was diagnosed several times with severe to profound depression during those years, because I never brought up the fact that I'd been diagnosed as bipolar and no one was seeing any mania from me. Well, during my last hospitalization when I was 26, everyone saw mania. It was repeatedly pointed out to me that I could not let people speak without blurting things out and talking very, very quickly. And my thoughts were speeding and racing. I was dancing around all over the hospital unit, uncontrollably, not calm at all, to say the least. And I still didn't believe it, and I still would not go along with it, but I did stay on Depakote for 6 years, and I had a stable period of time. I have not been in a hospital now in 13 years. I'm 39 years old now, and I'm excited about that. But to continue my story, when I was 31 years old, I went off all my medication, and we suddenly started to see mania through the roof. I was completely grandiose. I believed that I had suffered from a personality disorder and that I was the only one cured from it, and that my responsibility was to save the world from the stigma of this diagnosis. And even though I'd written a successful book that did help a lot of people suffering from a personality disorder, my current doctor doesn't believe that I ever had one. The average length of time it takes to get an accurate bipolar diagnosis is around 8 years, according to some research I read online recently. It just takes a while because it's hard for a clinician to observe all these patterns unless they are available for the whole lifespan. For example, my mania really kicked in when I was 31 to 35, and I was, grandiose, and I took on lots of projects, and I was very successful. And I gave conferences, workshops, retreats. I did all sorts of things, and I was riding on energy waves, while at the same time I was taking part in a lot of irresponsible behavior as well, and not managing money and things like that nature. Everything crashed for me about 3 years ago, and I went through the first major depressive episode that I've been through in about 5 years. And I wasn't hospitalized, and I didn't attempt suicide, but I was at the end of my rope. I had the end of a relationship, a miscarriage, a move across the country, and a job that failed all at once. And I honestly could not function. And I did not work for 3 years, and I went on disability, and now I only work part-time. But this is a perfect schedule for me because it honestly is all I can handle. I'm grateful to be stable. I'm happy. I'm glad that I'm not deluding myself with grandeur. In my teenage years, I actually lived like a homeless person for quite a while. I had developed a drug problem, and I lived a crazy, crazy life. At the same time, I graduated from college when I was 20 and got my master's degrees when I was 21 and 23. But I wasn't able to maintain employment for longer than about a year because of a combination of Asperger's syndrome and bipolar. But I didn't understand that it was bipolar, and I didn't understand that it was Asperger's syndrome. And whenever a case is difficult to treat, it automatically gets labeled a personality disorder a lot of the time. And it's really a disservice to so many of us. And having the right diagnosis has made all the difference in the world to me. So anyway, this has been a really serious subject, and so I'd like to play a little game with you guys, or play with my toys for a little bit, and share with you a few more thoughts about having bipolar disorder and what it feels like. And I hope you enjoy it. People with bipolar disorder do not necessarily live on the same type of planet as those who do not have it. For example, the average person has more of a smooth rolling life, very level and flat. Well, round in this case. And it says, the miracle ball method, which it would be such a miracle if my life were like that. Well, it's not smooth sailing for anyone, but it's still very different when you have bipolar. Your life doesn't really roll. It kind of flunches around. That's not really a word, but it kind of crunches around like that. And it's like walking on coral. And then the harder you try, the tougher it is for us to get by. This is a koosh ball, or some kind of a tension ball. And the harder you squeeze it, the more it swells up in one area. And it's a lot like what happens to us. All the tension builds up, and especially when we're depressed. And then we feel like we're going to blow up. And then when we're manic, it all seems to spring back in full force, and we're bouncing all over the place. And it's really a difficult way to live because it's unpredictable. And I've said before, it's like being underwater sometimes with the way the emotions just completely take over. I have a friend who says this fake aquarium lamp I have is really cheesy, but I'm using it again to illustrate a point. When I have had a manic episode, I feel like my mind is floating. It's uncontrollably floating, and it's not in any one direction, but it's as if I can't resist my impulses. I'm carried away by them, like waves in the ocean. And that's all that I'm aware of. It's all I'm feeling is the pull of the tides. When I've been depressed, it's been like walking in mud. Everything is heavy, and I feel stuck every step of the way. But the best analogy for me for a manic episode is feeling like I'm under the water. And I'm pushing against and against the stream, and finally I just can't resist, and I'm taken away by the tide.